Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. I'm your host, B-Check, and I'm laughing because we are having some technical camera issues just the second before we started the show, but we're all good now. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary. We're going to get into everything to do with the market in just a second. But before we do that, just a reminder, and nothing that we say here is financial advice. This modern market is exceptionally risky, so please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. We've got a bunch of interesting things to talk about today. We've got a whole host of CryptoPunk sales to talk about. We've got the Blast L2 airdrop to get into, and we've got some big Michael Saylor MicroStrategy Bitcoin buys to digest. We're also going to talk about the themes of the week, things that we think are important that have happened this week, as well as looking forward into the next few weeks and analyze those. Legendary, it's Friday, coming towards the end of the week. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing pretty well. Yesterday, we didn't have the chance to talk too much about the AI fund that's being raised by Paradigm. Today, I had to think about it because I was ordering a new toothbrush, and even my new toothbrush has now AI-powered features.
What?
So I find quite hilarious to see that AI now has to be marketed inside every single fucking thing.
Whoa. In what way? Why? How has your toothbrush got AI integrated?
I mean, actually, it is quite a neat feature, but I wouldn't market that as AI. It has basically it's able to track all of your teeth inside your mouth. And when you brush them, you get a 3D map, and it can tell you if you've touched every surface of every tooth that you were brushing, which is, I mean, it puts sensors to work for that, and it knows the orientation and how you're holding it. But marketing that as an AI feature is a
That
bit of
AI?
a stretch.
Yeah. I think what's going to happen is anything that is using technology is well, it's just AI, you know? Might as well say it's AI if it's using technology.
Yeah. But hey, I'm here for it. And maybe, if I brush it enough and I collect some badges or some, I don't know, other achievements in the fucking app, I might get an airdrop for that at some point.
Why not? Why not? So how are you at brushing your teeth at the moment? Are they is the AI telling you that you're doing a good job? Are you doing a bad job? What's the situation?
So allegedly, I received the toothbrush 20 minutes ago, and
Okay.
I didn't have the chance to get the package and try it yet. So I don't know how dumb or smart I'm at brushing my teeth, but I'm waiting for the almighty AI to tell me and to assess me.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know how many. I think this is going down the route of what's it called? You know, those smart watches or the smart things that tell you how to sleep. I'm a big proponent. Maybe I'm outspoken on this, where I just say, I don't need this piece of technology to tell me how I slept. I will just go to sleep. And the people who track their exercise, and to be fair, I did used to have an Apple Watch, and I did used to track the exercise. Then I kind of went off it because I came to the conclusion, I don't need to track the exercise. I just need to do the exercise. So doing it is more important than tracking it.
But the data
Sleeping is
is so
more important
beautiful.
than tracking it. Forget the tracking. Forget the assessment all the time,
No, the data is beautiful. I do like my Aura Ring, but you're right. I mean, my Aura Ring tells me if I slept well or not, but I also know that when I get up in the morning if I slept well or not. So it's a bit redundant. I do agree with that. A final point on that. Do you want to have a guess how much that AI-enabled toothbrush is?
Hopefully not a lot, because or is this one of your treats pre-blast TGE? I don't know, $50.
I don't want to. How much?
$50 maximum.
Oh, it's 0.12 ETH for a toothbrush.
What?
Yeah, it's a bit absurd. It's not a pre-blast TGE treat. I don't want to call the toothbrush a treat. That would be a bit pathetic, a bit sad.
That is that's outrageous. That's
It is,
outrageous.
yeah.
You've been duped. You've been duped by the AI, and you've obviously done the conversion into ETH to make it sound more reasonable to yourself. So you've self-duped yourself, I think, a little bit there intentionally. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. It's 0.12 ETH, or how I call it, a YOLO bet. That's a new metric to measure the price of things.
Right. We're going to get into well, now, you know, we do say we cover all types of markets, talking about the AI toothbrush market at the moment, and Oxy's hand shot up. We're going to get into the real markets in just a second too, so stay tuned for that. But Oxy, you have to come in here. High or low for the AI toothbrush market?
Dude, that's absolutely absurd, legendary. I love it. Like, so I've got a toothbrush that does kind of the same thing, but it's all Bluetooth. But this made me think of a story where QuickBooks back in the day, which is like, it's like, you know, the bookkeeping service or whatever. You used to be able to like upload receipts, and I don't know how. I don't know how true this is, but I remember this being a thing where you could upload receipts, and they were marketing that AI would go through and categorize and like document all the results of the receipt being uploaded. But in reality, it was like all manual on the back end, and it was you know, like, I don't know, they had all these people working on it, going through all these receipts and typing it all in and things. But that's what I'm envisioning every new, you know, quote unquote AI thing, like a toothbrush is. It's just like the same tech, but they just throw AI on it or whatever. But that is so funny that you have an AI toothbrush, legendary. That's incredible.
Absolutely outrageous. Completely agree with you, Oxy. And they're just gonna have all your data as well. Not only are you gonna know how well you brush your teeth, they're gonna know. What conclusions are people gonna draw about you, legendary? What's CT gonna say about you when this data gets leaked and they find out that you're not brushing your incisors properly or something? You know?
Yeah, I think they won't listen to my advice on Blast anymore for season 2 then, because they're like, if this guy can't brush his teeth, then how on earth should he be competent enough to give us advice on what to do on Blast?
Exactly. Exactly. These two things probably correlate. There's probably some type of direct relationship. Look, we've covered the AI toothbrush market. We're going to get into the real markets. As always, right here, right now, I'm going to share the screen for the people who are watching live on YouTube and watching live on X. We're going to start with some price action. As always, this is from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Let's get into it. We've got Bitcoin. Everything's down a couple of percent in terms of the majors. 64.3K for Bitcoin, down a couple of percent. ETH down a few percent to 3.5K, or just underneath 3.5. Solana down a few percent, also to $131. Headlines today: number one, 23 CryptoPunk sales yesterday, as many are swept in the 25 ETH region. We're going to digest that a little bit, talk about where punks are going and maybe the general NFT market stuff. Next, Sailor buys another 11.9K Bitcoin for $786 million that we kind of reported that would be coming in soon. But the price seems to be going down at the moment. So we'll reflect a little bit more on the crypto prices too. And finally, Blast L2 airdrop rumored to be 50% vesting for tokens above a specific threshold. That news came about from some sleuthing that was taking place on testnet. We'll dive into those details in a little bit, discuss the implications of that. In terms of NFT price action, we have CryptoPunks at 25.4 ETH. That's actually up a percent. Bored Apes at 8.9 ETH, which is flat. Mutants at 1.4, up a couple of percent. DGods plus 9% to 0.8. Captains at 2.9, up 5%. Azukis up 5% to 3.1. Penguins up 9% to 8.4 ETH. Mad Lads still chilling at 66 Solana, and the Nouns winning bid was at 4.5 ETH. Clearly, the market there has kind of bounced from the collapse that we've been speaking about the last couple of days, from the excessive leverage in the system and all of a significant amount of blur liquidity getting pulled. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Before we get into a discussion on some of the bigger trends this week, as well as those specific headlines, is there anything catching your attention?
Absolutely, yeah. We have to have a look at the Mintify heat map, and we have to again talk about Miladies. They are now sitting at a 5.1 ETH4. That's only a pump of 2% over the last 24 hours. However, there was a massive sweep going on with Miladies, and they actually had reached a new all-time high. So that strength to me is very impressive to see. And obviously Remilios, which you also had open for a quick moment, did pump on that as well, up 7%. But seeing that while the rest of the market seems to recover, we seem to have seen a local bottom for Pudgies and other collections, seeing that Miladies again have more momentum and actually managed to reach in that sentiment a new all-time high is pretty crazy. And there was, a long discussion. I think it was under one of Hunter's posts going on with what went wrong with apes, and the one of the takes in there was something we also talked about on the show, that counterculture has become culture and then has faded a bit from the top of mind attention share. However, Hunter was making the point that Miladies and obviously also Remilios are so much more edgy that for them it's way harder to get to the point where they actually become mainstream culture and then fade. So based on that, they might have a bit of a longer lifespan. But that train of thought I found quite interesting, to just see they can't become main culture that fast because they're way edgier. But seeing how they are so edgy, it's then even more impressive that they have reached an all-time high under these market circumstances.
Do you think it's one of those scenarios where, in order to become counter the culture, whether the culture is counter already or not, you have to get edgier and edgier, and therefore the edgier you get, the less, like, the harder it is to stay counter, right? Because you're getting
that's a fair point. Tiro is making also a point in the YouTube comments saying, Miladies are too hate-ridden to move into a nice long-term position. I think they stay high until the election and then fall off and run away, which is kind of also connecting to what you've just been saying, because leading up into the election, we see a bit more edginess when it comes to the meme coins, when it comes to the sentiment on the timeline. So that might be a time factor to look at. But yeah, it's probably becomes harder if you have to be edgier and edgier to stand out against the rest of the noise and to like defend your counterculture position. Just Stefano also added in the YouTube comment saying hate canceling is the new driver. I don't know. It will be interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple of months or the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we have said over and over again, when the rest of the market is struggling, Miladies and Remilios have always, or not 100%, but almost always moved in either an opposite direction or just shown incredible strength. They're clearly how would you describe it? They're clearly one of the strongest communities and just far more rock solid than a bunch of other ones at the moment. A point that Confusion just made in the Twitter comments, though, which might be informative, is that the Remilio coin cult is dropping soon. So maybe that is acting as a catalyst. Remember, that pre-sale took place not so long ago. And to be honest, I don't know the exact dynamics of it. I don't know what the NFT holders will receive. I don't know the tokenomics, but maybe that will play a factor. Legendary, I don't know if you had a chance to find out some of those details. But I suspect if that coin is coming and is going to go to holders, then maybe in some way we can talk about culture as much as you want. But if they're just going to get a coin and that's why they're moving up, then that kind of explains it potentially.
Yeah, but to my understanding, the pre-sale has concluded. The snapshot for the holders has been taken. All of my Remilios weren't eligible. Apparently, I bought them too late. So I don't think that this price action would be based on cult. And what I don't know is that whether when the snapshot has been taken, that's still tied to the JPEG, or if it's tied to the wallet that was holding the Remilios or Miladies at that time, that I cannot speak to.
Okay. I think that's fair enough. I'm just wondering, I'm just having a look at the rest of the heat map to see if there's anything else of interest. Maybe just a quick point here on the NFT lending market. Remember a couple of days ago, I did this example where I dove in quite deep into the lending market and kind of explained why the prices were almost certainly going to go lower. They did go lower from where we were. Maybe I'll just show people quickly what it looks like now for the lending side of things to be cleared up. So again, if you want to take a look at this, I'm sharing it on screen. I'll do my best to describe it as well for the people just listening on audio. But basically what's happened, if you take Pudgy Penguins, for example, which has bounced a good 5%, is a lot of the underwater loans. And when you say underwater loans, you mean the loans which are worth more than the current floor price have been completely cleared out. I suspect many of them were just sold into the bids that were standing. So what you can see on the lending chart now is a far more healthy looking chart where there are almost no loans looking for a loan. Remember, in Blend, they use perpetual lending, so the borrower and the lender can drop out at any time, which means if a lender decides they don't want a loan anymore, the loan will go into a refinancing auction straight away, where it's basically going back to the market to say who's gonna lend against this asset. And on that day when we looked at it, remember there was like at least 100 loans looking to be refinanced. And today, when you look at the chart, you can see here these two little gray dots that they are the only two that are seeking capital to be refinanced. A lot of the other ones have been taken, as you can see. These orange dots, I don't think we touched on that the other day. These are active loans, which are outliers. So you can see some with like crazy high interest rates, at reasonable LTVs, but you can also see some that are underwater as well. So it's not like the situation is perfect. You can see some like 10 ETH loans that the lender just hasn't cancelled for whatever reason. Maybe they don't want to take the loss. They know that they know that they're in the red there already, but maybe they just don't want the asset. They're happy to let it sit, and maybe if the price goes back up later, they can then kind of cash it out at that point. So much clearer on that side of things. Even on the Bored Ape side of things, for example, all of the loans are basically cleared. There's no loans looking for refinancing. So just a completely different picture. As you can see, it can kind of take a bit of time to clear that excess leverage out of the system. Now that it's done, it feels like, it feels like a healthier place to be in. Although I suspect there are still some blur farmers going at it, right? Like the main person pulled their liquidity, but there are still some people going at it. So I guess maybe a key question here, Legendary, or maybe I'll have a reflection on this too, is when the blur farmers are gone, do we see the market kind of recover from all of this? Will the market actually be better as a consequence in terms of price, or do you think that they're propping it up? What's your instinct here?
I do think that the farming has been propping up the floor prices, certainly. I think we might see a bit of a short-term recovery. I just don't know how sustainable that would be in the mid to long term. Personally, would have expected floor prices to go a tad lower. As you said, loan situation looks very healthy right now, but there's still like a bunch of new holders who it will be interesting to see how comfortable they are in their positions. Are they waiting, in the specific case of Pudgies, for Pudgy somewhere, and will then act accordingly to that. So that remains to be seen. I also think that Pudgies might be in a bit of a different position than other collections, as they have some really ultra rich holders who like basically don't have an issue cash flow wise to sustain a higher floor price. And I would say that the density of like wealthy people holding a Pudgy NFT versus other collections is definitely higher. But generally, I do think that for the short term, we should be in the clear. But mid to long term, I am not so certain about that, to be honest. But very curious to hear your reflections on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair take. I'm very interested to see how it plays out. I don't know 100% which way it goes. I definitely felt like we would go lower, and I still think that we will, because I can't see how there's one reason why, or a couple of reasons why they might not go lower. If there's some kind of hope of some type of token or some type of thing that people might be getting, I think that it can sustain and it can hold. But I do think that in general, we're likely to go lower because I don't see the sufficient demand or the creation of the demand for these assets at the moment. So I think we still go lower. But I'm open to the idea. This is why I'm a little bit hesitant to say that, because I'm open to the idea that the NFTs were battered so hard, and people were like people in the community were battered so hard by seeing these assets, which they kind of wanted, that they kind of thought was cool, just being thrown around in this washing machine of NFTs that like just being battered, not cared about by these farmers, and therefore driving the price lower because they didn't want it, and then even the true holders had to sell. I do think I'm open to the idea that maybe for very, very reserved collections, they can still actually maintain a high price because simply the people who hold actually want to hold and won't be selling. So it's not just about the demand side. I think hopefully what you see is a reduction in sell pressure across the board, because isn't there some crazy statistic that even with Bored Apes or some of these other prime collections, like it's actually a really high percentage that have never been sold from mint? I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's a quite high number. And what that shows is that it's just this churn amongst either traders or farmers that determines the actual buy and sell price. So if some of that can just get passed off into the hands of real holders, I'm actually open to that idea. But I do still think we go lower. I don't know if that's hedging my bets, but that's my kind of perspective on it. Legendary, want to come to you for your reflection on that. I've got some comments in the Twitter comments as well that I'll come to in just a second.
Yeah, I think for Pudgy specifically, I'm still convinced that there will be a token at some point. It will also depend whether we'll see token sinks with that and how they will look like. Obviously, launching a token is a very risky thing. And so far, I feel like everyone is really struggling, every PFP collection that has a token, to maintain that over the mid to long term. I feel like captains in the meme land ecosystem are taking a very good jab at that with Stakeland. I feel like that is also like looking at the recent partnerships. They had YOLO, now they have Borpa as that meme coin out of the Entangle ecosystem, that they are actually trying to create an interesting first mechanism for the token and put that to use. But I also think that Luca is very well aware of that. He needs something to be done with the token that is more than just stake it for a specific return on that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A couple of comments which I think are interesting. First, Karma Cowboy in the comments said, see, the opposite way. Short-term NFTs going further down as the category is max fudded. Medium term will pick up the narrative and demand at some point and return to growth. I actually think I agree with that. I don't know if that's the opposite way. I think we do go down, but I'm just open to the idea that some of these collections will get into the hands of like proper holders and be able to maintain a high price, because they would just be, they'll have holders that will not be selling. And yeah, once the churn is over, they'll be able to maintain something. Captain had a really good point, Legendary. I don't know if we haven't really touched on the BendDAO side of things, but on BendDAO, 111 pudgies are to be auctioned still, but yet to catch a bid. Looking a lot better as floor price raises and most above water. Kind of surprised someone hasn't hit all the first bid bonuses yet. Interesting point. The Oracle at BendDAO basically was broken. And so, Legendary, do you want to speak to what was happening over there?
Yeah, I think we touched on it when the story was unfolding, that once CBB has announced that they are pulling the bids and the prices started to collapse and loans started to get underwater on Blur, on the blend side of things, the BendDAO Oracle couldn't keep up with that and was actually broken for quite a bit of time. And Captain's point is a very, very fair one. I think that with all the people who've been around for a longer time, since the inception of Bend, they've seen multiple episodes happening around that protocol, and I feel that A, it's not as prominent as Blend, obviously, but B, that some people might be a bit reserved when it comes to touching anything that comes out of that protocol. But still surprising to see what Captain had said that nobody has yet hit those first bid bonuses.
Yeah, I think sometimes they can be quite juicy, to be honest. So Worth keeping an eye out on there, particularly if the price of pudgies continue to recover. Look, let's keep it moving. We're going to get into the bigger headlines in just a second. But before we do that, just want to go to my newsletter post for today. This is the 127th weekly edition of the weekly snapshot newsletter. As always, if you have not subscribed, it is in my bio. You can get to it from there. Just wanted to go through some of the themes that I'm picking out and ask the question, which of these are significant enough to keep an eye on moving forward? So Legendary, these were the things that I picked up in this week in NFT world, like the core little bits of news that I picked out from this week. And then I obviously did a bit of a longer article on predicting the future with NFT lending charts. Got a good video in there too, if you haven't seen that already. But there were, I think, 4 things I basically picked out today. 1, SEC closes the investigation into Ethereum as a security with no action against consensus. On that day, ETH was up against all the other coins. Since then, everything just seems to be like trending lower. Number 2, CryptoPunks continue free fall to 25 ETH. We're going to touch on that a little bit more. 23 buys yesterday in that region. Where's the headline asset for this space going? Like, where is that going moving forward? Want to hear how important you think that is. The roller coaster week for NFTs as Bored Ape Yacht Club as for NFTs as main liquidity was pulled from Blur. Bored Apes down to 8.8 ETH, Penguins down to 8.4. Tether announced the synthetic dollar over collateralized gold, over collateralized by gold. I keep thinking this is quite an important trend that I'm noticing, where more and more stable coin type offerings are coming to market. And then finally, AI coin Turbo flipped MOG to become the number 3 meme coin on ETH. That feels like it really came out of the blue. Don't know what you think about where meme coins are at the moment versus why this specific one just came out of the blue and went so high so quickly. Legendary, out of these, which do you think is worth keeping your eye on in the next week or so? Week or 2 or 3?
To me, definitely the stablecoin news with the synthetic dollar, because it does constitute a move away from, or a further step away from the fiat world and wanting to back things in US dollars specifically, and ultimately on a long-term trajectory, definitely not for the next 1 to 2 weeks. I would just love to see a stable coin that has a mature enough crypto environment that is just backed by Bitcoin. And it's like a fully native stable coin. I would love to see that at some point. Probably in terms of the next 1 2 weeks as a more relevant news. I do think that people are still underestimating ETH. We are approaching that 2nd of July within the next 2 weeks very quickly, where the Bloomberg analysts have said this is the over-under date for when we could see an ETF approval. Obviously, Gary Gensler has said that's going to be more towards the end of the summer, towards August, but everyone from the ETF filers has been very fast to amend and adapt and actually wanting to push things over the line as fast as possible. And the consensus news that they have won this big battle of legal clarity as to what ETH actually is doesn't get the love, in my opinion, on the timeline that it deserves to get.
Interesting point. I do feel like there's this existential battle at the moment between ETH and Sol for some reason. Like, these two things can obviously exist in their own universes and they can coexist very happily. But people on both sides really want to convince the other side that like theirs is way worse than the other. I have noticed recently from some quite smart accounts the idea that, which you just put forward, which is ETH is maybe very well positioned relative to the others now. That's something I've definitely noticed at the moment. The other creeping thing on my mind, which I need to research more, to be honest, maybe that's something I'll do over the weekend, is the talk of Sol unlocks. People obviously in the space get very scared about unlocks because it makes you think someone's going to be dumping a whole load of stuff onto your head. So I need to check that. See where we are with those. If anyone has any concrete information on that, would be happy to hear it. Legendary, any reflection for that? Otherwise, Funky's got his hand raised. Would love to hear from him.
Very curious to hear from Funky.
Funky, let's do it. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts? ETH itself and the news coming out there, where that's going on, and / ETH versus Sol, maybe even ETH versus Bitcoin. Frankly, I've seen some people trying to create that battle.
GM, and I will touch on that real quick, but I did want to say thank you for Legendary for bringing up the whole Bitcoin back dollar, because one of the things, Tether had a lot of FUD over the years, but they've amassed quite a Bitcoin war chest. So I feel that that's coming if they're already doing the backed with gold. We'll see that. And there's also some Bitcoin L2s, which you guys know I'm really interested in, that are doing over collateralized stablecoin issuance with Bitcoin itself. So like BitSmiley and some of these others. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny to your point about just this whole maxi narrative between some of the Solana versus ETH people and so on and so forth. But I don't see it. I think that they're both have their own uses. I think Solana is here to stay. And to your point, yes, I mean, I think the people are just writing off Ethereum when we're about to have this major, you know, surge, I think, from all the ETF being gobbling up, what we've seen in Bitcoin. I think we're going to see, maybe we will have some underwhelming flows initially, but I still think that there's going to be a massive push to really have these coffers get filled for many of these ETF providers once the trading starts.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Interesting to digest some of those things. Maybe let's shift into the headlines now, which is one of which was also in the newsletter with the CryptoPunks freefall. So there were 23 sales yesterday, which is very, very high for CryptoPunks. There were 23 sales. This was a reported 23 punk sales, of course, in the grand scheme of things, not all that epic, but the most we've seen in a while, not counting more sales on wrapped punk side of things. Mostly above average punks sniped at the floor or near floor prices. I actually saw a pretty epic flip where one of the ones that was in the snapshot, which I've included as a 33 ETH sale, was bought for like 26 ETH, like a few hours earlier. So there's some pretty, like, if you've got some risk appetite right now, you could do some CryptoPunk flipping. I remember I did one back in the day, like this was many months ago, and I think I bought for 40 and sold for 48 or something, which was very, very nice at the time. Maybe it was 44 and 50 or something like that. But that was more because someone, like, it seemed, just completely flawed a punk which should never have been there. There wasn't like some ongoing collapse where you had to try to consider, like, it's just like there was no momentum down at that point. It was just like a steady thing. Someone listed something at the wrong price, and then I listed it at the right price. This is more of a bit of a catching the falling knife situation where you could foreseeably buy at the bottom, and then the floor just keeps tanking a little bit more. So, Legendary, what do you think of the kind of the CryptoPunk flip trade at the moment, buying the bottom of these, but also like just generally, do we see these just bleeding out still anymore?
Flip wise, to me, I'm not an expert in punks, so to me, it's not attractive to put in like 25 ETH and speculate on a 1.25x on that, and just have another skill set. But certainly, if you think there's demand for that, that can work out well. But it only also works if the floor price at least maintains at the same level, because if everything dumps and suddenly your buy doesn't look as good either. I still think that there's a bit more pain for punks coming. I don't think that people like Punks OTC or some of the more like not prominent, but say active holders traders are capitulating on punks. But still, I do think there's a bit more pain to be seen there. And overall, though, for the mid to long term, I'm not worried about punks as a collection, but I don't think that they found at least the local bottom yet.
One interesting thing that I think about this in terms of opportunities, which I guess didn't exist last time in the cycle, and I see very few people talking about this opportunity, probably because it's newer, or maybe because it's quite a good one if you have some conviction. But when NFTs first came into the market and were going parabolic up, the way to make money from that was to just press the buy button, right? You press the buy button, and then you press the sell button. And then for a long period of time, if the price goes down, there's nothing that you can do. For other assets, you can short an asset if you think that that price is going to go down. The thing is, now there legit exists the infrastructure to short these assets with things like Wasabi, with things like NFT Perp. You can short these assets. And if, CryptoPunks have gone from 45.50 to 25, that's like a really profitable short if you had that on. And so I just closed a short yesterday. I think I was shorting CryptoPunks with 1 ETH, 3x leverage from about 30-ish. And I had one on a bit higher as well. And then I closed it yesterday, and it was like a 50% gain. Like I can't say I'm an expert in doing all of the maths of it and like figuring out why exactly it was a 50% gain. Like I'm still learning. This was like a kind of test short as I'm getting used to this ecosystem. But I don't think people have fully realized that, you know what, you can NFTs now, the infrastructure has developed sufficiently for you to be able to short these assets. Now, it's not as liquid and not as easy as literally pressing the sell button into Blur, which will take all of your asset and put it into the bid. So for example, when I tried to close the short, I couldn't do it for the full amount all in one go because there wasn't enough liquidity for you to close your position. So you had to exit it in slow amounts. So there is that to bear in mind. But I just don't think people have fully kind of internalized the fact that, you know what, you can actually take some exposure for these assets going down. Legendary, what's your reflection on that?
Yeah, I think so that this is something that's not on everyone's radar, but I do agree that liquidity is a bit of a problem still.
Yes.
I still have a bit larger or a quite large, at least from my perspective, a quite large punk short on, and I definitely cannot close that in one go either. So that's something to watch out for. But it's definitely a nice tool, and it's also a good hedging tool if I don't know, thinking you want to buy a punk, you want to borrow against that, want to put that stable coin, say on Wasabi to farm 30% yield, but also want to have a bit of a protection from a further downside and then have a short open. It's actually not a bad thing, or have a free loan by doing that. It's a very interesting tool to have in your kit as a trader, farmer, whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's where the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because like as part of your kit, of your tool, because even if it's just for hedging, even if it's trying to take advantage of the market, like to be aware that exists, but also to do the research to understand like, okay, even if I take this position and then I'm uploads, how do I actually get out of the position? Is it possible for me to get out of the position? Just being aware of that stuff, doing that learning. Because I remember I said this a long time ago. At one point in time, the JPEG market was just like, see a cute thing, press buy, then you press sell. Well, if you was, sometimes it was quite difficult to press the sell button depending how cute the JPEG was. But the point being, it was like a very immature market. It was a very straightforward market. It was just like cool meme, cool image, press buy, press sell. Now it's like hyper financialized. And yes, you can take loans against them. Yes, you can short. Yes, you can even have these blasting Pepes on Wasabi, which kind of are NFTs, but they're also 404s, and you can have the liquidity pool on Thruster, and you can do all these various things with them. That it's just a far, far more mature market now. So maybe just buying the cute meme can do well in some respects, but in order to participate in the NFT market as such now, you've got to have a bit more of these tools at your command, because otherwise you're just not operating on the same level as other people. I think that was my kind of pitch to myself, to be like, I need to learn this stuff, because otherwise the smarter people are going to be doing better than me. Legendary, reflection on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And I think if you put in the time and effort, there might be some interesting arbitraging strategies that you can follow. I still find that one of the most fascinating things, to watch people make money who don't take any directional risk, which is something that people like Cyrus are very good at, but which is also something that institutional money loves to do when it comes into this space. We talked about buying BTC and going short at the same time and profit on the difference in the future prices to the spot prices is something that institutional money loves to do. And I feel like there is more that you could do with JPEGs once we have more liquidity for shorts. And then it will become really interesting, because you said it, right? It has become more complex. Even the buying NFTs thing has become more complex from, oh, it's a cute thing, it will go up because there are talks about that, to now you have to watch the health of the loan market, which is something, you explained in a quite detailed way last week. And then in the future, you will also, once the short markets have grown to a relevant size, have to keep track of them and to see,
like open interests and things like that.
How does open interest look like? Are we about to get flushed out? It's something we see with BTC all of the time. It's something that's absolutely irrelevant for JPEGs right now. But for that to happen, all the JPEGs need to become more relevant, because admittedly, the market caps of the collections are too small for that to make sense right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as a conclusion on that section. Look, we want to get into the blast vesting stuff in a little bit, but I think that's a big topic, so we'll hold that one back for just a moment. Just a couple of points, maybe Legendary, on the Sailor buy. Obviously, Sailor MicroStrategy hyper bullish on Bitcoin. I don't think we need to dwell on that as such, because it's kind of repeat news in some respect. But maybe just a general question on the market in general, from a zoom out the majors perspective, just sharing some of the charts for the people who are watching in. We have said that we felt like, we're just going to chop around this summer. Bitcoin, although is in the last 24 hours down almost 4% to 63.9. ETH is down 3% to 3.49. Solana down 5 to 130. Just a quick read, Legendary, about where we are on this kind of on the major side of things. GCR obviously came back the other day and said, yes, we are still in a bull market, but we obviously seem to have been cooling off here, just like trading in this, I don't know, 60 to 70K-ish range. How are you feeling about it? How is it kind of impacting your portfolio and your thinking?
I think that's insanely strong. Just look at the amount of time that BTC has been oscillating between that 60 to 70K range and has maintained to stay within 15% of its all-time high. We haven't seen that in the last bull market. Once we had hit all-time high in the last bull market, 1-2 weeks later after that, it was down only for quite a long while. So that strength and resilience is amazing. I think our perspective might got a little skewed, because we've just gotten so used to up only, not for the last 2 to 3 months, but if you are more precise on the overall movement, actually since last November, we've been trending up and up and up. Fundamentally, obviously, nothing has changed. We still have the major news of the ETH ETF coming. Again, BTC has 5% of its total supply in the ETF already in roughly half a year. Obviously, we had a bit of FUD yesterday or the day before with Germany's Bitcoin stash, the wallet that, according to Arkham Intelligence, was identified as Germany's wallet, and them selling parts of their stash, which is actually quite insane. That is something to think about, that you now have governments who have confiscated BTC as a result of various legal actions that they had taken against nefarious actors. And I think for Germany, it was a good part of the stash is Movie 2K, which was that website where you could watch movies that weren't on streaming services, that were in the cinema, and just save money on that. And they had a massively successful business by that. And now suddenly, if a government has to think about what do we do with our cryptocurrency stash, even if they don't have a cryptocurrency strategy, they suddenly become large holders, and they have to think about what it is that they want to do with that stuff. And that's quite insane if you think about that.
Yeah, that's so funny. I think I remember some tweet by Kobe where he suggested, I don't know if it was a suggestion or just an idea or a joke, frankly. It was like, what if one of these, instead of just going into more and more debt, I don't know if this works practically, but instead of just going into more and more debt, if you are going to go into debt, why don't you just buy some Bitcoin with the debt? In some way, work your way out of the debt problem by buying some harder assets instead of just printing the same stuff over and over again. But it is an interesting point about Germany. Like, I would have thought, kind of like, if you view this stuff from a portfolio perspective, someone in there, it must be like some younger person with like a perspective for the future, just be like, guys, we don't need to sell this. Like, we've got enough of the other stuff. Should we just hold some, like, as a government, as a nation? Like, shouldn't we just hold a bit? I can't believe that someone wouldn't be like, come on, guys, let's just keep this bit. We got it for free. Our cost basis is 0. Like, why not just keep it? I don't know. Funky, your hand is raised. Bitcoin expert. I know you don't want Germany to sell the BTC, but what are your thoughts on this?
There is no second best, and to quote Saylor. But I mean, to your point, this is exactly what Saylor and MicroStrategy is doing. They're selling convertible notes and bonds, and like basically selling debt to buy more Bitcoin. I think that this is a genius move, and if you look, I just put it in the comments. A big reason why we've been flushing consistently is, if you guys haven't seen some of these tweets, but there's a lot of veteran ancient Bitcoin whales who've been in the game for well over a decade that have been actively selling every time we've like pumped to 70. They've sold like $3 billion worth of Bitcoin, and this is what keeps bringing the price down. But look at how strong it is. I mean, we're still kind of hovering in this mid 60s. And yes, altcoins are always going to wilt every time that we have this big sell off. But I think it's very bullish when you look at this structure. It's very healthy for what's happening. We're just kind of trundling along the top. And if you remember 2020, we did the very same thing. We kind of spiked back up. We went back down to 8, and we kind of trundled between 8 and 9 most of the summer. And then all of a sudden things started picking up in October as we headed to election season. And then it was off to the races after that. So I think we're going to see a very similar pattern play out.
Okay. Well, let's see how it does play out. Funky, thanks so much for that insight. As always, enjoy the bullish Bitcoin outlook. Right. We've got the blast airdrop stuff to touch on for sure. But just before we do that, let's get you up to speed with everything else that's been happening in the space. From the snapshot, which is pinned up top, let's get into the Web3 roundup right now. Number one, Layer 0 token trading at 3.2 billion FDV. Some controversy on the tax to claim mechanism, where you had to make sure that you actually contributed to Layer 0 before you actually able to get your tokens. That was an interesting new mechanic. Number two, Pac-Moon hits 100,000 holders on Blast. Number three, Bitwise airs national TV ad for Ethereum, contrasting it with tired and old big finance. Number four, Mochaverse announces its TGE date, which is quite important. It will be in July. So technically not specific date, but it will come next month. The floor price was steady at 4 ETH. The Winklevoss twins donate $2 million in Bitcoin to Trump. Azuki hires new COO Steve Chung, known for taking Korean content global. That's interesting to see on the Azuki side. And finally, Teleport, an Uber competitor, has launched on Solana. It's a new rideshare service. It's launched on the Solana blockchain. It aims to offer a more profitable experience for drivers and more affordable options for users. The service charges a 15% commission compared to Uber's 44%. So interesting to see how that competes with the ubiquitous Uber. That's the Web3 roundup. That's everything else that's happened in the space in the last 24 hours. We've got 6 minutes left of the show. Perfect amount to try to digest the impact of this investigation into the Blast airdrop. We've spoken about the Blast airdrop a lot. The TGE will come, I believe it's on Wednesday next week. Expected to be, I don't know what precisely, in the region between 5 and 12 billion, maybe 5 to 10, 7 to 10 maybe. So it's a very anticipated airdrop. It's got the attention of a lot of people, and it seems to be the case that some sleuthing on testnet has suggested that there will be a vesting schedule. Currently looks like it will be 50% of tokens above a specific threshold. So maybe if you are a significant whale with loads and loads of tokens coming your way, then whales might get something like 50% of TG and the rest of the 50% over a particular time period. That is not 100% confirmed. This has come from some sleuthing on the testnet. We've got some thoughts from NFT Stats here as well to share, but Legendary, I want to come to you first. What are your thoughts on a Blast airdrop that's kind of designed in a way where you don't get everything up front?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. First of all, a lot depends on that threshold, how high they will put that. Is it something that concerns the top 1,000? Is it something that concerns the say, top 10 farmers. CVP also has made a good point by saying that it also depends on the total allocation of the Blast token to be airdropped. Because if we're suddenly not talking about those 12.5%, but we're talking more about a range of 18 to 20%, and 50% of that unlocks immediately, that's still a generous immediate unlock of 9 to 10% of the total tokens, and the rest to be vested. And I think, at least from the whalier side, that seemed to be more of the thinking, that this could be a sign that actually the portion to be airdropped in the overall tokenomics might be more generous than people have expected it to be, which also would fall in line with how recent airdrops have worked out. But obviously, if it's a 10%, assume it would only be a 10% unlock or a 10% airdrop, and not very high thresholds. Say everyone who is in the six figures has to vest, and they only get like 5% at TGE. That could instantly flip the sentiment from people defending Blast to people hating on Blast. And again, like I think, but I also hope that Pacman is aware of that. So without having that additional context, it's hard to judge the news on the things that we just know right now, because there's a way how this could play out in an insanely bullish way, and there's a way how this could play out insanely stupid and just completely fuck the launch FTV.
I think I know what you mean when, as soon as you impose this type of, how would you describe it? This type of this line in the sand where it's like, look, if you've got more than this, then it's going to be this 50% vesting. If you've got less than this, then you can just have it. As you say, everything depends on that line. Like if you put that line in the wrong place, you just know what people on the timeline are going to be like, going to be completely up in arms, and can really, really flip the sentiment. And maybe one interesting thing, the tweet that we shared said that it'll probably be like an Athena style, where whales get 50% at TG and 50% over a time period. I didn't see that much FUD about Athena, but the difference between these more wouldn't necessarily describe it as a complex protocol, but the more sophisticated DeFi protocols, these interesting stablecoin synthetic dollars, and Blast, is that Blast has captured like attention. And it would be unfair to say Athena hasn't captured attention. It's a $3.5 billion asset. So that's not the right way to say it. But the type of people who are in Blast are all the DJs who used to be on Blur. They've also like captured all these content creators who are going on about it all the time. And I feel like they're far more susceptible to getting annoyed about this stuff. I don't know if you saw Clemente's epic rant yesterday about the whole situation. It's that type of feeling and emotion that will come out from the groups of people invested in the Blast ecosystem. So I'd be cautious to draw the line in the right place.
Sorry, and another key information we're also missing, and that OG Gaming pointed out in the YouTube comments, at least I wasn't aware of that. How do we read this threshold? Is it 50? Is it the tokens that are exceeding that threshold that will be vested? Or basically, if you have, say, the threshold is 100K and you have 120K Blast tokens, all of them then would fall under the vesting, and you only get 60K and 60K are to be vested? Or is it just the part that exceeds the threshold that would then be only unlocked half and the other half being subjected to be vested?
Great point. Great point. Shout out to YouTube comments on fire in general at the moment. Appreciate all the people commenting there, and on the Twitter side, to be fair, too. Appreciate all of that. Maybe one final point for me, this would be a reasonable place to conclude for the show, conclude for the weekend, is this. This came from NFT Stats's tweet. He made 5 interesting tweets, but I'm just going to share one of them, one point, which I think is the takeaway point, and kind of informs my whole strategy with the stuff. We're playing someone else. This is actually what Clemente said in his rant. We're playing someone else's game with someone else's rules. No one owes you anything. This has been true with Blur and Blast from day one. Someone else makes the rules. Everyone adapts and makes decisions accordingly. that's why my philosophy with all of this airdrop stuff has always been, don't get too invested. Don't burn too much actual decent capital, which is USD and ETH. Do not burn too much of it in the hope that you're betting on gold, which is a new asset that's just come to market, never existed before, not on chain, created by Pac-Man a few months ago to make us get excited, and points which are now in the billions from what I can tell. Like, we don't know how much those things are valuable. They flip at the whim of their decision making, depending on whatever internal decisions and conversations that they're having. So just always consider that imbalance in the imbalance in information and where you are in that. And as a final point, I put this tweet out earlier today where I said, do you remember the time, this was quite funny, do you remember the time when it was early on when the jackpot came out? And I said this, I'm going to share it on screen as well at the same time. I said, remember when everyone was saying it was so unfair that token holders on Blast could win gold so easily? Everyone was on the timeline saying, this is so unfair, that as if there was no risk attached to holding random meme coins that had just been created on Blast. So everyone was saying it was so unfair. Token holders getting all this gold. LPs should be rewarded more. These people aren't taking on any risk. Since then, most token holders are pretty much wrecked in general. If you're holding random meme coins from that period of time, maybe you made some money on them, but a lot of them are down. And so holding those speculative tokens is insanely risky. Anything when you're going gunning for these points, gunning for gold, like, it's insanely risky. And so for me, always prioritizing ETH over gold. Yeah, of course I want to get gold, and I've got some gold. I managed to get some gold too. But I think sometimes we lose sight of the thing, and who knows, maybe some people will have burned more ETH than they get in return. Legendary, final reflection from there, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, quick final reflection on that. I agree with Clemente saying that, you play someone else's game and you just have to deal with that. Hard disagree though with nobody owes you anything. I mean, yes, legally, you're not entitled to an airdrop. And I don't want this to sound like an entitled take, but I feel like is a clear understanding that this is a symbiotic relationship where all the farmers, creators, protocols are building on the dApp because they get blast gold, because there's incentives, and that ultimately drives attention and users to the dApp, to the ecosystem, and allows it to have a higher FTV, which then rewards its creators and investors. And for that, there certainly is an expectation of a reward to take your money and time to this ecosystem versus taking it to another ecosystem. So yes, nobody owes you anything, but there clearly is a reasonable expectation to be rewarded for that, which has been built and shaped over the last couple of years of how airdrops have been structured.
Happy for you to have the last word on that. Thank you so much for joining me, my legendary co-host. Legendary, thank you to the rest of our contributors, Oxy and Funky, up on stage with us. Thanks to the people going hard in the YouTube comments, hard in the comments on X too. And thank you to everyone else joining us in the audience. It's been a wonderful week with you. We will, of course, be back on Monday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. BST, live on X on YouTube, but you could also catch us on Spotify and Apple. If you could, over the weekend, we'd appreciate liking, subscribing on YouTube, even on Apple Podcasts. Those 5-star ratings do help us push us in the algorithm. We appreciate your assistance with that. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Take care, and we will see you on the other side. Bye-bye.